If you asked me if my wife Jessie was cheating on me, I would probably hit you for insulting me. I thought everything was perfect between us. Our two sons were in college, and we were preparing for our golden years. We both worked hard to save for retirement and retirement funds. When we weren't working, we enjoyed our home life or went out to restaurants, which was much cheaper now that it was just the two of us. I won't go into details, but Jessie was the smartest girl I dated in college. She had a 4.0 GPA and was on a full scholarship. Her SAT scores were almost perfect. Everything changed on Monday night when I was rushing down the stairs and Jessie was coming up. We both fell to the floor and I ended up on top of her. She smelled like sex and men's cologne. There was a look of horror on her face. And then she pushed me away and screamed, "What the hell, Jack?" The thought that she had been cheating on me left me speechless. I couldn't comprehend it. The only clear thought that came to mind was that I needed proof. "I'm sorry, Jessie, I lost my balance coming down the stairs. Luckily, you were there to catch me." I offered to help her up, but she pushed my hand away and said she needed to take a shower. "I'll order a pizza," I said. "Do you want anything?" "I'm not hungry. Order whatever you want." Before the pizza arrived, she announced that she was going to bed. I looked for her cell phone, but she must have taken it with her to bed. So I made a list of things to do. Get her text messages, turn on location tracking, check her email, listen to her phone calls, check her credit cards, buy surveillance equipment and trackers, lower the credit limit on our cards, and start hiding money. Jessie always left 15 minutes before me. So as soon as she left on Tuesday, I called work and said I was sick. I started with the credit cards. There was one unpaid transaction for a no-tell motel from the previous night. That was the only one. I lowered the limit to $1,000. That was the only card she used. The cell phones were in my name, so I checked the call logs. There was one strange number, and she called it right after her shower. For a woman I thought was very smart. She seemed to want to get caught. I went to the bank, withdrew half the money, and put it in an account in my name only. We had a lawyer, Jim Howe, whom we consulted from time to time. He had recently helped us update our will when the boys left for college. Since they were adults, guardianship was not required. I asked him to come immediately, and he said he could come right away. After coffee, I told him I wanted a divorce. He was surprised. I mentioned that Jessie was cheating on me. He was even more surprised. He reminded me of the prenuptial agreement. Jessie's father was wealthy, and he was afraid I was some kind of gold digger. He thought his daughter would go far. He drew up a prenuptial agreement that was very one-sided. Basically, if I cheated, Jessie would get everything. I asked him what would happen if Jessie cheated. He started harassing me. I stood my ground and said that if he was so sure, he should make the document fairer. He was furious. We never got along, and after that conversation, our relationship deteriorated even further. He updated the document so that in the event of proven infidelity, the injured party would receive 100% of all property accumulated during the marriage. Every year, Jim took some legal maneuver to keep the document in force. Jim agreed to file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but warned me that I would need proof. Lots of proof. He gave me the name of a private investigator and set up a meeting for me. I went to an electronics store that sold surveillance equipment. I was sure I looked like an idiot when I walked in, and that was my first sentence. He said that if it weren't for cheating spouses and idiots, he'd be working at Walmart. After selling me $500 worth of trackers, voice-activated recorders, and hidden cameras, he spent another hour teaching me how to use it all. Next stop, a private investigator. That was the most enlightening meeting. Since the cell phone belonged to me, the cell phone company was required to provide me with copies of all text messages and call logs. I gave him one suspicious number I found. He also advised me to set up fraud alerts on the credit card she used, so that I would be notified immediately if another bill came in from no-tell motel. I was stunned, but what I did that day somehow lifted my spirits. At least I was in some control of my own destiny. On Tuesday evening, Jessie complained of a headache, took a shower, and went to bed. I didn't know if she smelled like sex. She wouldn't let me near her. I was angry because we hadn't had sex in almost a week for the first time in our entire marriage. She left her purse on the table by the front door. As soon as I heard the shower turn on, I hid the tracking device in her purse and turned on the location tracking feature on her cell phone. Maybe that was excessive. Then I hid one of the voice recorders there. The next morning, I went to talk to my neighbor. His wife had left him a few years ago. One day, when he came home from work, he was stunned. There was a Mercedes in the driveway with a man sitting inside, and 2 suitcases were lying on the steps. He went inside, and the man handed him an envelope and said he had been served with a subpoena. His wife had told him she had met someone else. She left. The guy from the Mercedes took her bags, and she drove away. He was more than happy to help burn Jesse. He was tech-savvy, so he installed a camera on the front door and one facing the driveway. Jesse would obviously see them. Hopefully, that would keep her from sleeping with the guy in my bed. On Wednesday morning, Jesse told me they were having a small party for Julie's birthday, so she wouldn't be coming home for dinner. I called the private investigator when I got to work. He thanked me and said he had received the text messages and that I wouldn't like them. He also had information about my wife's lover, his wife, and their 2 young children, including their Facebook pages. He sent me everything by email. I started looking through the text messages and lost my appetite. I told my boss I needed to leave and would take the whole week off so I wouldn't infect anyone else. He was unhappy, but he couldn't argue with my logic. Pouring myself a glass of good scotch, I began to study her text messages closely. I poured the whiskey back into the bottle because I needed a clear head. I think their relationship went beyond friendship a month ago when they started going out to lunch every day. Jessie complained that after 23 years, she found sex with me very boring and couldn't remember the last time she had real orgasms. The sexual jokes continued and became increasingly explicit. Last Monday, they left work early and consummated their relationship at the No-Tell Motel. They planned to do it again tonight. I blocked her credit card. If he was going to sleep with my wife, I wasn't going to pay the bills. The biggest shock was their plan to spend Friday night together at the Hilton. She was going to tell me she had a bachelorette party and then complain that she had too much to drink and would stay the night at a friend's house. My mind was racing. I sent emails to Jim Howe and asked if this was enough evidence. He said he would prefer photos and asked when I wanted the papers served. I asked for Saturday around noon when she returned from the Hilton. I passed this on to the private investigator. Jessie called me on Wednesday evening and said her credit card had been blocked. The tracking device showed she was at the No-Tell Motel. "Sorry, Jessie, we haven't talked since Monday. You're probably still mad at me for hitting you. On Tuesday, I was paying my bills and noticed a strange charge on your card for some motel. I called the credit card company and they temporarily blocked the card until they could look into the transaction." "What the hell, Jack? Why didn't you tell me?" "Well, Jessie, you've barely spoken to me in the last 2 weeks, so I didn't really have a choice. How was Mary's retirement party and where did you guys end up going?" "We went to Menino's. It was nice. I'm going to miss her, but what the hell, Jack? How am I going to pay my share of the dinner now?" "Young people use Venmo these days. You have a Venmo account, remember?" "Go to hell, Jack. Just go to hell." And then click. They still spent an hour at the No-Tell Motel, probably because her lover got the money. Or maybe that hotel accepts Venmo. I went back to the note I had made that morning to make sure it was Julie's birthday and not Mary's retirement party. Until today, I had never heard of either Mary or Julie. I was starting to think my wife was losing her mind. She wasn't even trying to make her stories logical. Among the information provided to me by the private investigator was the name of Jessie's lover, Phil Russo. The package also contained the name and cell phone number of his wife, Maria Russo. An hour later, Jessie burst into the house, still shouting, "Go to hell, Jack!" She threw her bag on the floor and headed for the shower. I quickly grabbed the voice recorder and replaced it with a new one. Maria Russo's story about her husband's infidelity kept me awake most of the night. I didn't want to hurt her, but if I were in her shoes, I would want to know. On Thursday morning, I sent her a text message. Mrs. Russo, my wife Jessie works with your husband, Phil Russo. I've learned that they've been having an affair for the past 2 weeks, including 2 stays at the Notel Motel. Please don't tell your husband about this yet. I need to do something first. I'd be happy to come over and tell you everything I know. Is this some kind of sick joke? I wish it were, but here's a link to our Facebook page so you know who we are. I'm also attaching a copy of my credit card statement showing the hotel charges from Monday. I blocked the card because of suspicious charges. One of your cards may have a charge for last night when they spent an hour there. Damn, was her response. Do you want me to come over and show you what I have? I can be there in 30 minutes. How do you know my address? Wait, let's meet at my mother's place because I have a camera on the front door. Besides, she can look after my little one while we talk. Maria sent me her mother's address. I gathered my documents and was at her door 30 minutes later. Before I could knock, I heard an argument inside, someone shouting, "I told you not to take him back." And in response, "That's easy to say when you don't have a 2-year-old hanging on your legs." I knocked, and Maria opened the door. "I'm sorry to come with bad news." You probably heard them arguing and guessed that this wasn't the first time. "Watch your language," her mother shouted, bringing coffee and Italian cookies. "Jack, you were right. He has an unpaid bill at the Notel Motel. What else do you have?" "These are text messages between my wife and your husband. I'm warning you before you read them. It's bad enough that they're having an affair, but the way they talk about us is just shameful. It's just guilt, Jack. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But they need to put us down to feel better about themselves. They wouldn't have cheated if we were better lovers, better providers, and so on. I've been through this before, and it took a lot of counseling to get over it." Her mother shouted from the kitchen, "And look where it's gotten you, Maria." Maria grimaced and began scrolling through her text messages. Tears streamed down her face, and her mother appeared as if by magic with a box of tissues. "I'm so sorry, Maria. I didn't sleep all night trying to decide whether to tell you or not. In the end, I wanted you to know." "You did the right thing, Jack. I wanted to know. But that doesn't take away the pain." Maria's mother wanted to say something, but Maria gave her a look that scared me. "I assume you have a plan, Jack." "A rough plan. My lawyer wants photos. Hopefully the private investigator got them last night, but I want to burn that bitch. I'm sorry, but from what I've read on the internet, that's what it's called. When she comes home on Saturday, her things will be on the lawn in front of the house, the locks will be changed, and when she tries to get in, she'll be handed a notice. In our state, it's no-fault divorce, but her father insisted that we sign a prenuptial agreement when we got married that requires the unfaithful spouse to forfeit all rights to any property. That's why I need the photos." "Burn that bitch. I like burn that bastard better. Aren't you glad I insisted you make that jerk sign a prenup before you got back together?" her mother yelled from the kitchen. "We don't have any property, Mom. We have a house and it's mortgaged. The cars are leased. A prenup won't help me." "You should have let me call Uncle Tony." "I can't let the father of my children swim with fish or whatever else you have in mind. We were just going to have him neutered. Maybe we can share a lawyer, but I don't have that kind of money. But I'd love to see Phil's face when he comes home, sees his shit on the lawn, and gets a court summons. Let me call my lawyer and we'll exchange the surveillance footage." A few minutes later, I told her, "Jim said he'd represent you and asked if we wanted to stop by his place for lunch, his treat." We were sitting across from Jim when we received the private investigator's report from the previous evening. It included photos of the not-so-happy couple arguing with the manager and several shots taken through the window of them having sex. I also included the recording from lunch and the hotel. "The photos from the lobby are very useful. The photos from the room will be rejected. Hotel rooms are private. The recordings could help strengthen the case. You know your father-in-law will want revenge." We called a private investigator and got everything ready for Friday evening. Jim knew exactly what he wanted. Jim suggested suing their company for breach of the moral code. You might get some money. Most companies don't want bad publicity, but both lovers would be fired. How am I going to feed my children? Maria asked. We decided to come back to that later. Jessie tried to be nice when I pretended to come home from work. She made dinner, and we had a nice chat at the table. She still couldn't understand what had happened at the party the night before. I was sad. This was the life I had dreamed of, and she was throwing it away. After dinner, she invited me upstairs, but I said I had a lot of work to do. She said in an unpleasant tone, "This is your fault, Jack." The next morning, I saw unpaid purchases from Victoria's Secret and an expensive clothing store in the mall on my credit card statement. It seemed like she had big plans for the evening. I knew what time she was leaving, so I went to my neighbor's house so I wouldn't have to see her leave. She sent me a text asking where I was and said she wanted to say goodbye. I ignored it. My neighbor was watching from his window, and when we saw her car pull away, we got to work. My neighbor started changing the locks in the house and the garage code, while I packed all her things into plastic bags. I left her jewelry as it had been bought during our marriage. After he changed all the locks, he went to Maria's to do the same. He also helped carry all Phil's things out onto the lawn. The private investigator started sending us photos of the happy couple standing in line to check into the Hilton Hotel. In 2 of the photos, they are kissing, and most of the time, his hand is on my wife's butt. Maria and my lawyer also received copies of these photos. I called Maria and asked if she was okay. She said no and asked her mother to call Uncle Tony. My next task was to prepare what I was going to send her father. I included the recent photos from the Hilton and the official photos from the No-Tell Motel in the package. I added a couple of key text messages, especially those that detailed their plans for the evening, and included a recording of her pleasuring Phil in the car. It wasn't strictly necessary, but after our argument about the prenup, I decided to add fuel to the fire. My phone had been off since Jessie left. I turned it on while drinking my morning coffee. Jessie still wasn't home. There were several messages from her complaining that I hadn't responded to her message asking where I was. Then there were messages saying she was too drunk to drive and was calling an Uber to get to Julie's. Which begs the question, if you're calling an Uber anyway, why not just go home? At 10, I took the trash can out to the yard and started putting our wedding album and all of Jessie's photos in it. At 11 o'clock, I emailed my loving father-in-law the package I had prepared. 15 minutes later, he called me. "What the hell is going on, Jack?" he asked. "Well, it's 11 o'clock and your daughter hasn't come home from her date last night. Her plans are outlined in the text messages attached to my email." I could hear him crying, and I felt sorry for him. No father wants to find out that his daughter is cheating on him and leading a promiscuous lifestyle. "A private investigator is watching the hotel and will call me when they leave. I'll call you when it's time to pick up your daughter. Bring your pickup truck to get her things from my lawn," he wrote. At noon, the private investigator called and said they were leaving the hotel. Jessie would be back around 12:30. Tim called the bailiffs and started the process. I doused the bonfire and the photos with lighter fluid and lit a match at 12:15. Then I sat down in one of our rocking chairs on the porch with a cup of freshly brewed coffee. Jessie pulled up to the house around 12:30 and I called her father. Jessie got out of the car cautiously. I thought she would pretend she didn't know anything, but she didn't. "Looks like you found out, Jack. What do you know?" She sat down and grimaced. "I think I know more than enough. Maybe that's why he divorced her?" "Jessie, are you crazy? Phil and Maria are still married. Here's his Facebook page. I showed her the happy couple with their 2 children. That must be old information. He told me they were divorced." "Look at the date, Jessie." She started to cry. "I assume that's my clothes in the plastic bag and what's in the bonfire. Our wedding album and all your photos that were in the house." She was about to respond when a car pulled up to the driveway. A man and a woman got out, asked Jessie for her ID, handed her an envelope, and told her she had a court summons. Jessie covered her face with her hands and muttered something like, "Phil said this wouldn't happen." "Is that the same Phil who told you he was getting a divorce? What happened to you, Jessie? You were so smart you almost got a perfect SAT score, and in the last month you've done one stupid thing after another." A car pulled up unexpectedly in the driveway, and an elegantly dressed woman got out and walked up to our porch. "I assume you're Jack, Jessie's husband. My name is Maggie Rizzo. I'm the Senior Director of Human Resources at the company where your wife worked. Jessie, this is a letter of termination for violating company ethics. It is effective immediately. There will be no severance pay. Your personal belongings will be packed and will be waiting for you in the lobby. If you do not pick them up within 72 hours, they will be disposed of." She looked at the fire and said, "You took the phrase, 'burn the bitch,' literally, didn't you, Jack?" I smiled but asked, "How did you know?" Their boss noticed that their lunches were getting longer and their clothes looked scruffy when they came back. It didn't seem like they were trying to hide it. She reported it to HR, and we have our own private investigators. I really like Fire, Jack. I think that was your wedding album." I nodded, and she smiled as she left. She had barely pulled out of the driveway when Jessie's mother screeched to a halt on the driveway. I was really afraid she wouldn't be able to stop in time. She walked up to the porch and hit Jessie so hard across the face that her saliva splattered everywhere. Then she grabbed Jessie by the hair and dragged her to her car. Pushing her into the passenger seat, she said, "I'm so sorry, I don't know what I've done to this girl. If you need anything, let me know." She screeched her tires as her husband parked his truck in front of my house. He got out of the car, and it was probably the saddest sight I've ever seen. He was such a proud man, and his daughter had ruined his life. He started loading the bags into the truck, and I went over to help him. He was crying as he grabbed the bags and threw them into the truck. When he was done, he said, "Jack, I know we got off on the wrong foot, and I know I misjudged you, and I know for sure that I misjudged our daughter. She's not getting any financial help from us, especially after the divorce. All I can say is that I'm sorry." "Wait, please. Sometimes I can put my pain aside, but it's not easy. Jessie, who caused me all this pain, is not the smart woman I fell in love with. I'm no psychiatrist, but I think there's something broken inside her. It doesn't ease my pain, but I think you should try to find her a therapist or something." "Thanks, Jack, for the advice. My wife and I will look into it right away." Before calling my sons, I had to warn Maria about Miss Rizzo. "I think that's the woman who just pulled up. Phil was trying to get into the house, so I called 911. What does she want?" She came to fire Phil. Their boss found out what they were doing during their long lunches and reported it to HR, so they're being fired for violating company ethics. "Damn it, Jack. I can't live without Phil's income. Even if I go back to work, I won't be able to pay the mortgage. Damn, even with his income, we're already a month behind on the mortgage. Maria, I need to call the boys and ask them to come over tonight. Maybe tomorrow I can help you sort out your finances and prioritize." We agreed to have dinner together. I called my sons and told them they needed to come over tonight. They asked too many questions that I didn't want to discuss over the phone. Finally, I told them that their mother and I were getting divorced and that I didn't want to discuss the details over the phone. They couldn't believe their mother had cheated on me. They couldn't believe it and hated her. Then they wanted to go to her. "Boys, your mother had a rough day. Your grandmother hit her so hard that I thought she was going to knock her out, and then she dragged your mother across the lawn by her hair. When things calmed down in the morning, I realized that she wasn't the woman I married. I'm not saying I know what happened. Your mother was badly beaten today. If you want to go and beat her again, that is strictly forbidden. If you want to show her compassion, I will call your grandfather right now. If your mother wants to get better, she needs support, not humiliation. Dad, how can you feel compassion for a woman who cheated on you? Inside her, there is still the woman I loved with all my heart. That can't just disappear." "Okay, Dad. Call Grandpa. We promise we won't hit her. It's going to be hard." According to my father-in-law, the boys arrived, and Jesse tried to run away, saying, "I think your father told you what I did. Come on, tell me how much you hate me." Dad wouldn't have let us come if he knew what we were going to do. We're not happy about what happened, but you're our mom, and we'll always love and support you. According to my father-in-law, Jessie burst into tears, and my boys rushed over and hugged her. They sat there hugging their mother as she rocked back and forth. It was the most touching sight he had ever seen. He and his wife cried too. I don't know what you said to your boys, but I'm very proud of them and you for guiding them in the right direction. Thank you. Maria's finances were in shambles. I don't know what Phil spent the money on, but there was nothing left. Maria was forced to declare bankruptcy, lost her home, and eventually moved in with her mother until her Uncle Tony found something more suitable for her. One day I invited her to dinner, and when we arrived, her mother was already waiting for us. You're both in a bad place right now. You need time to heal, and seeing each other will get in the way of that. Maria, you don't know how strong you are. A 2-year-old isn't going to hold you back. You need to be independent to grow. Jack, you're a damn good guy, and if things were different, I'd love to see you and Maria together, but you need to step back and heal. I kissed Maria goodbye. And that was the end of our very brief relationship. Jessie didn't fight the divorce. A year after the divorce was finalized, I found her sitting in a rocking chair on the porch. She was wearing my favorite dress. Jack, I never had a chance to apologize. I know it won't take away the pain I caused you, but I feel like I have to do this. My father told me what you said to him, and you were right. Early menopause. Who would have thought it would cause me to make such terrible decisions? That's no excuse, and I'm working on many of the wounds I've inflicted on myself, but I see hope. What about us, Jack? Is there hope for us? I shook my head and remembered the speech I had given my sons. Is there someone else, Jack? There won't be anyone else, Jessie. Then why did you shake your head? It's too soon, Jessie. But I had a dream the other night. One of those dreams that seem so real that you wake up. In the dream, we were at the christening of our first grandchild. We were standing arm in arm, holding the most precious thing we had in our hands. I looked at you, and you were the woman I fell in love with. We kissed, holding him in our arms. And then I woke up. I think that dream will come true, but we can't rush fate, Jessie. She hugged me and cried, "Thank you, Jack, for giving me hope." Jessie ran to the car. Her father texted me when she got home, just, "Thank you."